Hello. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, hey.
Hey, how are you?
Long time no see.
What's it been, about 30 years?
I was thinking, let's see, I was 23.
That's crazy.
Yeah, I love your background. How'd you get to Idaho?
Well, I moved here about a year and a half ago. My girlfriend's from here and her daughter's from here, so
Okay.
I moved here to be with them.
Yeah, it seemed like all of a sudden Facebook, you were in Idaho all the time. I'm like, what? Oh, good.
You look great. It's been, 30 years ago. I was thinking it's been let's see, it was 7th and 8th grade for me, and that would have been 1990 to 1992.
Yeah, because 92, I was pregnant with Elizabeth, our oldest one. And then I left teaching for a while, and yeah. Goodness, no, let's see. I had Elizabeth when I was 27. So yeah, how old are you now?
42.
42. Wow.
Hard to
Wow.
believe.
Wow. And you're a professor.
Sort of, yeah. I mean, I taught part-time at the community colleges in California. I taught at Cabrillo College and Evergreen Valley College, and I lectured at UC Santa Cruz for a while. And then I stepped away for quite a few years to work in academic publishing. I worked for a company called Aplia, writing and programming online homework assignments. I did that for like 8 years. And then I worked as an instructional designer for 4 years, designing and building graduate courses for several online universities. And when I moved here, I was driving around. I was like, oh, there's a community college, not even a mile away. So I'd missed teaching. I thought it'd be fun to do again. So before I knew it, I was teaching again.
Yay!
Just part-time, like, 2 classes a semester. So
that's exciting. And philosophy too.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're a good writer.
Yeah. Have you been reading any of it?
What made you want to learn to write and read?
I wonder who could help with that. Yeah, and it's funny because I've always been a writer. I've always been writing something, whether it's, poetry or, I think the thing that was hard for me is I spent so much time in grad school, and grad school just sucks the life out of you from a writing standpoint.
Yeah.
I really had to fall back in love with philosophy again and fall back in love with writing again.
Right. And do something that you want to do, not just because you have to.
Exactly. And I'm at a really great point in my career that way. I mean, my bread and butter doesn't come from philosophy, really. I'm just teaching part-time. All my day-to-day work is instructional design work. And thankfully, it's pretty easy, honestly. At the end of the day, I still have plenty of effort, plenty of energy left to do writing. And that's a good position to be in. I can write about philosophy however I want to, and I don't have pressure to do it academically or do it, I'm not trying to get anything published. I can just write it and think about the things I want to think about and write it in the way I want to write about. And I think my writing has developed more of a dramatic arc that way than it might have otherwise. It's not, hopefully not.
Yeah, take your philosophy, take your time with people. So how did you meet your girlfriend?
Oh, well, it's interesting. We both do Star Trek podcasts. So we met online quite a few years ago.
Okay.
So yeah, I host a couple of podcasts on Star Trek and philosophy. One on Star Trek and philosophy, and one on Star Trek Voyager.
The philosophy one I've seen, but the other one I haven't.
Yeah, I don't do those too often anymore. I stepped away from it for a while, and I just started doing it again. But between the two, I've done 200 episodes. So that's a lot of content.
Yeah.
200 hours worth of content. And then she hosts one on the original series.
Okay, excellent.
So we met.
So that's how my daughter met her husband, is online. And then they ended up getting married, and she's in Portland, going to grad school forever. She started master's and then grad school, and it's clinical psychology. So
interesting.
Yeah, she's not going to make any money, but she's going to spend a lot of time getting there.
Isn't that true about grad school in general? You have these great hopes of the things you're going to be able to do with it, and you go, oh man, at the end of it, you still go, okay, I'm always at risk. I'm just one layoff away from being an unemployed philosopher.
Well, there's a whole new world out there. Now you can live in Idaho and do everything you want.
Yeah, it's actually really, I've been working from home full time for 5 years now, and I love it, really. I don't have to, for years I spent time commuting. I'd spend 5 hours in the car every day when I was commuting to San Francisco from Vacaville. And I don't miss that one bit. This is much better.
I was just talking to my neighbor, and their son, did a lot of commuting, and he's in mechanical engineering and all this stuff. And he just moved back home because COVID, and he can do everything online now. And now he's just told her, oh, I'm going to move to New Mexico. and buy a bunch of property and for $80,000 because, you know, I can, and I'm doing everything remotely. And we're like, whoa, do you know anyone there? You know, so I think a lot of people are enjoying not having the commute and other options and everything. So.
Yeah, I got laid off a few months ago, and you know, the job search was interesting because companies are kind of going one of two directions. Either they're just moving everything online because they have to, or they're really kind of doubling down on this the old-fashioned bodies in the seats mentality. You know, no matter what's going on, they're like, no, we really want someone in person. It's like, sorry, I'm in Idaho now, so
yeah,
I had to hold out for a job that really was okay with that.
Yeah. So does your girlfriend have to work besides the podcast? Are you guys able to do it without it?
Oh God, I wish I wish we could make a living doing podcasts. That'd be great. No, she's a social work case manager here in Idaho Falls.
Okay. So where is Idaho Falls? I know Boise because everybody knows Boise, but
the other side of the state. We're in the southeastern part of the state.
Okay, because you said southeast. Okay. So do you still get a lot of snow there?
Yeah, a ton.
Okay.
Which I love. I never really liked the California weather, honestly.
Okay. What about your family with your grandma passing away and everything?
Oh yeah. Well, let's see. That was a long time ago. Let's see. Wait, yeah, I guess do you remember that really? I mean, that was a long time ago. Yeah, that was, let's see. One grandmother passed away in 1997. My grandma Fruling from Vacaville, and then my other grandma Forcell, she passed away in 2003, I guess. So quite a long time now. You know, there actually aren't that many people left in Vacaville. My mom's there, and I have an aunt and cousin there. But my sister, she and her husband live in Rockland, and they've got 4 kids, so they're you know, busy doing stuff all the time. And everyone else is spread out. I've got family all around the country, really. But
Okay. Well, you can hop on a plane and get there, I guess. So
yeah, we're kind of laying low. I mean, we're really trying to do our part just to, you know, not spread coronavirus around, and you know, go teach my classes and come home. Teaching with a mask is so weird. Like, I never in a million years thought I'd be teaching with a mask on. So I show up to teach my first day of class, and you know, I can't see them, and they can't see me. And, you know, it's really impressive.
So for a while, the mask, I would like almost hyperventilate. I'm like, okay, Becky, breathe, even with the paper ones. And now I'm a little better with it. But maybe, you know, we run a residential cleaning company now.
I saw that. Yeah, I was going to ask you about that because I mean, when did you stop teaching, and are you doing that full time instead? Like,
what when the kids, I had 3 kids in a row really quick, so I stayed home, and Rick has worked at Intel and all over, you know, high tech kind of thing. And then I started subbing middle school because, you know, I love middle school and high school, and I would stalk my children. So if they were the middle school they were in, I would teach a bunch, and then the high school they were in.
Interesting.
And then I love PE and all different things. So I would, you know, they went to huge schools. So I did that, and then I thought I'd get back into it. But every time I went to get back into it, because 2 different times I had breast cancer. You know,
I didn't realize.
So once I was going to start back teaching, and then that happened, and then I was going to start again when the couple kids went off to college, and then that happened again. But then I was all revved up to go work full time again, and then Rick got laid off with a package at Intel about 6 years ago, and he's very entrepreneurial, and so he's always done something on the side, you know, selling things on eBay when that was a thing, and doing electrical work. And
interesting. So, sounds like me in some ways. I'm always doing something on the side.
I know, he's like crazy. I'm not anything like that. And so this is something that we could do, but it's been insane. It's been insane. We have 20 women that work for us.
Oh, wow. Goodness.
And they all now are Hispanic at different, you know, Hispanic speakers at different levels. And they're amazing, but teaching them life skills and loving on them. So on one hand, you have like the lower level of society, you know, and that culture group. And then on the other, we're expensive. So then you have all these customers that have to make some money to be able to afford us. So you have like both worlds coming together where you're trying to help the customers, and also I'm trying to help my ladies not be professionals. So it's been really interesting dynamic. learning to teach and love on them. I mean, they're adults, so you can't like spank them, but they also don't have the same skills or opportunities that you and I have had.
Mm-hmm.
So it's been a journey trying to understand how to help them.
Interesting.
And yeah, but then your livelihood depends on it too.
Right.
So you're like,
you know, it's interesting. My mom actually, I would say she owns a housekeeping business, but really she's just a housekeeper. She does it herself, and
right.
she's been doing that for, I mean, since the nursery closed back in like 1996 or so. She's been doing that, and she's still doing all the work herself, and she really can't keep doing it anymore. I mean, every year that goes by, it gets harder and harder and harder for her to do. So I wish she'd become a bit more entrepreneurial about it, so she could. Not have to be on her hands and knees scrubbing floors all the time herself every day, but that's just not what she's done. So
yeah, it's an interesting dichotomy. I've Rick's the computer person, then I'm the people person, but then having to train the office, like I've never sold anything. Mm-hmm. So having to become a salesperson, mm-hmm. Having to train people and then let them fail, mm-hmm. Because you can do it all yourself. But then at some point, if you're going to grow, you have to just allow others to learn.
Mm-hmm. And take some ownership over it.
Mm-hmm. It's been interesting. It's almost been 6 years, but we stayed open the whole time. Mm-hmm. It's it's been crazy. Well, California's crazy anyway.
It is. I have to say, I really like the slower pace here. Honestly, I miss the things to do in California. I miss being able to go to the beach, or go to the mountains, or go to San Francisco, mm-hmm. go to the wine country. But honestly, I don't miss the rat race one bit. I feel a lot more grounded here day to day. But I was just in go mode for a long time. It was, I was, when I was in Santa Cruz, I was doing grad school, and I was teaching at a couple community colleges. I'd be in the car driving from college to college, and then when I got my job at Appley, I moved back to Vacaville, and I was in the car all the time commuting. It was really just go, getting projects done. And, I didn't have that chance to breathe in that sense for years. So now I feel like I can breathe and be myself a bit, and not be in such a rat race.
Yeah, it's interesting. How did we get ourselves into that, where everything's so intense that this time in general too has allowed people to like reconnect, slow down, not feel guilty if you're not mm-hmm. having a million people over that you haven't seen.
That's right.
I don't know.
but people are connecting in all kinds of interesting ways. I mean, just like this. I mean, we haven't talked in how many years, and here we are jumping on a Zoom meeting. Yeah, that's great. I love it.
I think for us, the whole shutdown has been very different than people that can work from home, mm-hmm. because our youngest son and then daughter-in-law, they live in Orange County, LA. He does everything from home, and she had to do school from home, graduate mm-hmm. school too. And so they came and lived with us for 2 months. And then my niece, who lived down there, so all these 20-somethings, plus our other son's working from home here. So we literally had all these adults and their dog living, doing everything. Rick and I are out in COVID land, mm-hmm. and come home, and there's this orchestrated people cooking, working, computers everywhere. It's really interesting.
Yeah, it's kind of
cool. Everybody's like, almost. Oh, shelter in place, and we're not seeing anyone. Oh, poor us. I'm like, no, we have a billion people everywhere I go.
Yeah, I think if there's one thing that's been hard, it's just, I'm generally a social person. I like getting out there and go to coffee shops, seeing friends, seeing family. Mm-hmm. I don't get to do any of that right now, other than remotely. So that's mm-hmm. been the thing that's been the biggest challenge. But
yeah. Now, have you guys opened up? California is going to open up on Monday a little more now.
Well, I don't, honestly, I don't keep up on it that much. So okay. Little that actually affects me, as long as I can teach my classes, I work from home full time, and as long as I can go to the grocery store and get food. So we're definitely requiring masks. So, when you go out, everyone's got a mask on. So most businesses are open. I'm not sure. Actually, hey, she's doing my girlfriend's doing her work notes. She's like I said, she's a social work case manager.
Come and say hi to me.
Do you want to come say hi?
Yes.
Huh? You want to come say hi?
Just say hi. I promise. I won't bite.
Here, what's that? She's doing. It's okay. She's coming. Yeah, she was in the middle doing her work notes.
I know I can't hear.
Here, I'll take the.
Nope.
Oh, I gotta change the audio setting. Hold on here. Let's see.
Oh, she went out again.
Let's see. Okay, how about now?
Yes, now I can see you. Good morning.
Oh, no, it killed the audio. Hold on here.
Hi.
I unplugged the headphones and now I have
Hi, I've seen you guys on Facebook. How old, what's her name and how old is she?
There we go. All right, now we can hear you.
Yay. Yeah, good morning.
Hi there, good morning.
Hi.
Almost morning, almost not morning.
Here, I'll turn off the background so.
Yeah, so you can see. So how old is the little girl?
13.
I was gonna say middle school.
Yep.
That's exciting. I still love that age.
Yeah, she's like, oh, I'm gonna be 8th grade this year. I'm not ready for
Okay.
that.
Yep.
Wow.
This is one of my junior high teachers. I had her for English and for GATE class in junior high. And I was your age.
Long time, huh? That's what social media can do for you.
Yeah, exactly.
Exciting. So I heard you guys met online.
Yes. Yep. Sorry, I'm in work mode. I'm in my notes mode.
Okay, you're okay. You're okay. It was nice to meet you. Nice to meet you and your daughter. I'm glad things are going well.
Yeah. No, she's good. I have no concerns about her whatsoever. So she took a couple of high school classes this summer because they can get high school stuff going now, so that when they get into high school, they can start taking college classes and graduate.
Okay.
An associate's degree before they and graduate high school at the same time. So yeah.
You will never meet a more studious junior hire. She makes me look like a
oh my goodness.
So.
Okay.
Yeah. She took her 9th grade English and a creative writing class this summer. She's in both. So.
Well, she sounds like she's following in your footsteps. Then that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yep. That's why I'm glad she likes school.
So. Yeah. How about the friend thing with all the Zooming? Do you guys still get together with friends? How is that working?
She's got a couple friends that she's able to get together with. So they actually are going to be going back to school physically.
Okay.
Yeah, this week. Mm-hmm. So we're in phase 2, so they're allowed to go back in person.
Okay.
They're going to do online on Mondays, and then Tuesday through Friday they'll go to school.
Okay.
So, yeah, for at least now. We'll see what happens.
I know. Hey, take one day at a time. That's awesome. You make Zach happy, so that makes me happy.
Well, thank you. Well, nice to meet you.
Yeah, you got a good one. That's fun.
I'll plug the headphones back in here so don't.
Yeah.
1 second.
Does she have family in Idaho then? Oh. Does she have family in Idaho?
Yeah, her parents, they have a trailer, so they were down in Texas for a while, and now they're back. They're managing a campground nearby, so we see them every couple of weeks or so.
Okay. Do they like you?
Yeah, I think so.
That's always helpful. I mean,
I'd like to think I'm easy to like,
Yeah, you are. Now that I have 2 in-laws, a son-in-law and a daughter-in-law, yeah, I mean, they're fun. They're so different, obviously than our family of origin, but they bring so much to our households. But it's, there's always something new. You have to go, oh, wait, that's okay. We got to bring that in because Edwin's Dominican, so he speaks Spanish and English. So, but then my daughter-in-law, she also speaks Spanish, but she's from Minnesota, so she's really quieter. So our house isn't quiet. So she's been very overwhelmed by us. But she's starting to hold her own. Yeah. I'm like, well, you married Daniel. He's an extrovert, so I don't know. Well, good for you getting to know in-laws and, any other kids around?
No, just my girlfriend's daughter. Soon to be stepdaughter at some point.
Okay. You going to have a Zoom wedding?
We might, if things don't back up, might have to have a Zoom wedding.
Yeah, we just attended a Zoom wedding last weekend, because like 20 could go and then we were online. It was kind of irritating, but they said it went well for the 20 people that were there, but us watching it, they didn't do very well with the camera and everything. So anyway,
Yeah, it's really kind of an art. I've really been enjoying doing the online classes, actually. Like halfway through the semester, last semester, everything got moved online, and I do podcasts all the time. I've been using Zoom for years, so for me, it's almost second nature. And what's fun about it is that you can actually record it. Most of your this is the strange thing as a teacher. Most of your teaching is forgotten, not forgotten, but it's not recorded. It's not archived. You know, it's in the past somewhere. You know, in people's memories. When you do it online, you can actually make a video of it, and it's an artifact. You can use it again. People can watch it. You know, 100 years from now, someone could watch it. So I'm really enjoying just having the chance to you know, take some of what I do in the classroom and make a thing out of it that other people can enjoy. If anyone gets anything out of it, it was probably worth it.
Yeah, that's really exciting. So that's kind of your plan for the near future?
Well, you know, teaching philosophy doesn't pay the bills, of course. So I think the hard thing for me is just, you know, staying employed, you know, at a decent income, doing instructional design or whatever related that I can get, you know, because it's just such an unstable corporate environment. You know, you get hired at a company and you might be there a year, you might be there 5 years, you might be there 10 years, but at some point you're going to get laid off. You just have to know that when you take a job with a corporation at some point these days. It's not like you work at the same place for 30 years and get a gold watch anymore. It's just the economy doesn't work that way, and companies don't work that way. So that's a little stressful. You always have to kind of plan for, you know, the next layoff and the next job search. But teaching part-time, I'm really enjoying. You know, if I could make $100,000 a year as a as a philosophy teacher, I'd do it. But I am really proud of the fact that I actually kind of did that for 8 years or so, working for Cengage Learning. I was getting paid to write philosophy stuff. I was getting paid to write and program online homework assignments for logic courses as a philosopher, getting paid $100,000 a year. So I did find the angle for a while.
You're like, I got to do what I love. Now I got to go backwards. So
yeah, so you know, I've kind of forced myself to hold out for the kind of job that I want, even if that means you know, like, it's stressful to get laid off. You know, you don't know when you're going to find the next thing, and you know, this was the most recent layoff, was the longest period I've been unemployed ever. I mean, since I was 15. You know, having 8 weeks or you know, some number of weeks with no job. It wasn't even very long, actually. It was just a handful of weeks really with no job before I picked up some contract work. But that's really stressful. God, is this going to turn into 6 months or a year of job search? And thankfully, you know, I've got skills that are really in demand. So it's
and you can use them.
Yeah,
well, that's one reason why Rick wanted to start his own job, you know, his own company, because he was tired of being laid off, you know, you know, his friend group, they've been laid off like 2 or 3 times since. I mean, some of them have found jobs, but in the last 6 years, they've gotten older. And, you know, they're white men and they got laid off more and more. And so even though starting this company's been a lot, we know, you know, no one can lay us off.
I'm taking a little stab at it. Like, you know, once I got laid off from Cengage, I was like, you know, we don't need a big giant company to do this. It started as a small startup. The company that bought us was just a big company that wanted our product and wanted to lay everyone off. But really, we didn't need a big company to do it. You know, so I was thinking, well, maybe we really should get a couple of us back together and do this all over again and just do it a little better and, you know, go to war with a big company. It'd be fun. It's always more fun to be the underdog anyway, right?
Yeah.
And then I made a what do they call it? Oh, the term's escaping me. You start a small business. It's a limited liability LLC, limited liability corporation. I started one with a former coworker of mine briefly. We made mobile apps, so we made 2 or 3 apps, and we sold like 20 copies of them. So all this money to do the LLC and you know, all the stuff that goes along with it, and we made like $20. So that was an enormous waste of time, but I learned a lot. I learned what not to do. I think. So you know, I've tried a little bit, but really, I think at this point, you know, as fun as it is to think as an entrepreneur, like, oh, it'd be fun to start my own company and do whatever, you know, really, I'm actually finding it really empowering just to put my 8 hours in, get my $100,000 a year paycheck, and still have all my mental energy left over to do the things I want to do. I'm being so creative with podcasts and blogging and teaching again. And why would I throw all that away to, you know, for some really stressful project that might fail? So
I would do what you're doing. Yeah, you've done that. It's very difficult to have both of us doing this, and you know, it's 24/7. You try to put it on a shelf, but it's difficult to keep it on the shelf. But
Yeah, and you can't, when you're doing that, you're not doing all the other things you're interested in. So
no. Yeah, like yesterday we had a team lead meeting, and they like this. I have this casserole that's potatoes on the bottom. I mean, these women like to eat. So potatoes on the bottom, and then eggs and cheese and milk and bacon, and it takes process to make it. Well, I made it for Christmas for them once, and now every time we have a team lead meeting, they want it. And I'm like, but there's no oven there. So everything is a huge deal. You call this there, and then hot sauce. And then I brought my Nespresso machine and I was making it for them. But that was, then they felt love, because that's how they feel love. And then we had shown them how to do the meeting. And this is the first meeting, it's all in Spanish. And I don't speak Spanish yet. But it was interesting. But yeah, the process, that's Saturday. And by 2:00, you're like, okay, I got the weekend now.
So let's see. Yeah. I'm trying to think. So, I mean, you must have had me as a student right at the very beginning of your teaching career then.
So I taught middle school for a couple of years in Illinois. Yeah, then we moved to Davis. Yeah, and then I taught 3 years in Vacaville. Yeah, and then
only 3 years in Vacaville. Interesting. I had no idea, because you don't know these things as a student. You do your junior high for 2 years, and then you move on. You never think about what teachers are doing in their lives. So.
And what was funny is, I don't know if it was your class, but some kid, maybe it's my birthday or something, and some kid was like, "You are so old," and I started laughing hysterically. I'm like, you know what? You remember that. When you were like 26, you remember this, please, because you are going to laugh just as hard as me.
Well, yeah, I mean, the perspective is so interesting. I mean, like, when you're in junior high, someone who is 26 seems ancient.
I know. They were like, "You're so old." And I'm like, yeah, not really, but that's okay to you.
I just can't believe that was almost 30 years ago. I mean, time goes so fast. The phenomenology of the time experience is fascinating. I mean, everyone knows this, the time seems to go faster as you get older, but it's really true. It's like, wow. And I'm at this weird cusp, and maybe you experienced something like this, but sometimes it seems like that was just a gazillion years ago. So much has happened, so many changes in life.
Yeah.
Whether globally or individually or whatever, it's a totally different world. And I actually kind of miss it. The optimism of the 90s was infectious.
Yeah.
The Cold War was over, and technology boom was happening, and
right.
It's a relatively peaceful time in the world. And, we grew up in that. So I think anyone in my generation really grew up with this kind of Pollyanna view of the world.
Yeah. Yeah. The 80s had a lot. The 90s had a lot of it. I mean, there was problems, but there was optimism. But
it wasn't a world war. It wasn't a Vietnam. It wasn't, there were problems, but they seemed pretty minuscule by comparison, given today's problems. So sometimes it seems like a long time ago, and other times I go, wow, 30 years happened in the blink of an eye. And it makes all of world history seem like it wasn't that long ago. Like, I've always kind of been interested in classics like, ancient Greece and ancient Rome. And, I was like, wow, 2,500 years ago, or however many years ago it was.
Right.
It doesn't seem like that long ago now, honestly.
Right.
Human life goes by pretty quickly.
Yeah. No, most definitely. Yeah. Sometimes I feel like it's like that. And then other times you're like, oh no, like the last 6 months, you're like, boy, that's been a long 6 months.
I have to say, I'm a little embarrassed, honestly, at how few specifics I remember about certain things in education. Like, you remember the environment, you remember the people, remember maybe a specific assignment or something we did in class, but I mostly just remember the gestalt of it all.
Right.
I was trying to think of any specifics I remember. Like, what are things we did in class? Like, I almost have, what's that?
Well, it was a blackboard.
Yeah,
it was a blackboard. Isn't that funny? I think, in high school, things started to turn to whiteboards, and there's no computers. No computers.
That's right. No one had phones. I mean, there were computers. I mean, I grew up with. I mean, it was the 1980s and 90s in California.
Yeah,
so I grew up with Apple IIs in the classroom, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, not in junior high. Really. Interestingly enough, I had a computer every year in elementary school at Orchard School in Vacaville. I had a computer in the classroom. There was an Apple II, or maybe a TRS-80.
Right.
When I was really young, all the way through elementary school, and then in junior high, no computers.
Yeah.
I don't know why not.
And then you guys sat in little desks you know, that you would come sit in now and, you know, you could open them up or not. I mean, no matter what size you were, you sat there, you know, and you sat in rows. Where now you would never put people in rows.
You know what I remember reading in your class? And again, I might be wrong because, you know, your memory fades over time. You know?
Yeah.
I remember reading The White Mountains from the Tripod.
Yes, we did.
Right. I still love that series this day. I made Chloe read it.
Yeah, and I remember you said you were going to read the rest of it.
And I did. Yeah, and I still love that to this day. Yeah.
You went to the library and asked what the rest of them were, and you read them.
That's right. It's just amazing you remember that.
Well, I thought, yay, something happened where someone got interested in something and took it even farther.
You know, and I think that's something, I don't know if other people do this. I suspect a lot of people don't. They read something and they're on to the next practical thing in their lives. But for me, those things are little seeds that germinate. You know, I'm always coming back to stuff I've read or things I'm interested in. You know, it's something you know, that in particular I maybe haven't written about, but things I read like in high school. Like I remember reading like the Iliad and the Odyssey in high school.
Right.
And, you know, I still am fascinated by that stuff today. And, you know, I'd like to think I bring a more literary approach to philosophy than other philosophy teachers do.
Right.
Those things have always stuck with me.
That's good. Well,
I wish they'd do that. I wish they'd make a good movie out of that. Actually, I remember watching that TV series, that old 1970s tripods. What's it called? The Tripods. Right. It's really low budget.
Yeah, that's very old school now. Yeah.
It's very, very cheesy. I always thought that was one of those things that really deserved to be brought to life a little better than it ever had the chance to be.
Yeah. So you've melded all of that together. It's good for you.
And I remember GATE class because we did English in seventh grade, and then I had you for GATE in 8th grade. And I remember building a bridge. I think.
Because we did a matchbox. You know, the whole goal was to have triangles. You know, everything with triangles.
I remember launching rockets. Did we do that or something too?
Yeah, there was some rockets that we did, but there was some kids that didn't like that at all, but we were trying to do that. That class was difficult for me as the teacher because it was new, and they had 7th, 8th, and 9th grade in there, and all different ability levels. Yeah. So even though it was considered GATE, the level of ability was.
I always got the sense that they really didn't know what they wanted GATE students to do. Like, they knew they were supposed to be gifted, whatever the heck that's supposed to mean. So let's separate them and give them something special that other people don't get to do. But really, all that did was probably reinforce the idea that if you're special enough, you don't have to play by the same rules. You can do fun stuff.
What was the parents too? But the principal, Shireen, she was under a lot of pressure to do something. The principal there, did you remember the lovely black lady?
Yeah, what was your last name? Wilkerson?
Wilkerson.
Wilkerson, right, okay.
Wilkerson. And she was under a lot of pressure to do something for GATE that was extraordinary.
And it's amazing how provincial
she
that
didn't
seems
know what
now
she
in
wanted.
But.
Yeah. And then they're like, here's $500. Do you're like, what?
What are you going to do with $500? And buy you enough matchboxes, to build a bridge.
And then they're like, you have 7th, 8th, 9th graders. And so it was kind of interesting trying to figure out how to put that together in something that would work. I think nowadays we have a lot more to work with, having the computer and stuff like that.
Well, it's interesting now because I've never taught K-12 at all. I went right into higher education, but from my point of view, I get students that are really underprepared. They can't read more than a couple paragraphs without getting bored, and I'm just massively disappointed at their writing skills. And maybe it's geographical, California versus Idaho. Maybe it really has changed culturally in 10 years since I was doing it before. I'm not sure.
They're texting everything. Like before emails, they would text you and you're like, no, this is an official document. You have to write an email it's official. You can't write slang in this. And then now it's even worse. People are writing slang in email. And now, my girls who are adults, my ladies, they don't know how to write in cursive.
Yeah, I don't think most people don't. Yeah, I still do. My grandmother used to drill me. She used to make me like if I had nothing to do, she'd take out a book and say, "Here, write out this page of a book in cursive." Okay. Keep yourself occupied.
Yeah, because you have a signature line, and then you have a print line, and they honestly, almost 100% of them now don't know what I'm even talking about.
So I mean, things are always going to change. You know, it's hard because, you know, when you're in the middle of a transition like that, you just don't know which parts are culturally sticky, which are the things that are going to matter in 100 years, and which are really things that are going to go by the wayside. You know, it really is like, you know, no one knows Morse code either, and we don't sweat about that.
Oh, that's true.
So I do, maybe. I'm a ham radio operator. I still do. You remember that? I got my ham radio license while I was in junior high, and I got
You
Chloe.
Did?
Yeah, Chloe got hers last year, so she did.
Oh, you're carrying on the tradition.
Yeah, exactly. But you know, some of those things are really anachronistic, and that's okay, right? So if cursive is an anachronism, is, you know, we older people might lament it, but it, you know, really we haven't lost all that much. But some things really do matter. Like, people don't have long attention spans for reading, or they can't put two sentences together. That's going to hold them back in life, and we lose a lot culturally. More importantly, I think. So I just don't know what to do about it. Like,
what I found is people they want something written, like, you know, The Help. You know, that story, The Help. Well, part of it's culturally accurate, but some of it isn't. So they want a book that has the same cultural norms of today.
Yeah.
Instead of saying, well, that period of time, that's how they spoke, that was accurate. That's what teaches you about that era. It doesn't mean it's right or wrong per se, or maybe it's wrong, but you should know that that's what it was like, at least in that environment. And I don't think anybody wants that anymore. They just want it all to be.
Yeah, and I think there's such a pragmatic turn. I mean, the question that people are asking is always, you know, how is this going to get me ahead? Am I going to use this? Is this going to help me get a job? Is this, you know, these really massively practical questions, which are important. We all have to pay the bills, but but those aren't the important things in life. You know?
Right.
You know, really, like, you know, we do all those things. You think about art and literature and philosophy and culture, and, you know, write poetry and whatever. And it's like, you know, those are the things worth living for. It's not so you can get a good job.
You will to find a purpose. What's your purpose, and how can you articulate it?
Yeah, and unfortunately, I think people are just being steered towards this really practical track. Like, you go to school so you can go to college, and here's the job career paths. Like, you know, like Chloe here, and this year coming up, she's got a class on I forget what it's called, career readiness, or career exploration. Okay. So, you know, by junior high, they're already thinking, like, you know, here are the career paths you have based on the things you're going to do in high school. It's like, whoa, put the brakes on. That's way too practical for you know. We want people to think about ideas and see possibilities, and not and maybe that's supposed to be in service of it, but I think it backfires. I think it really reinforces this highly practical mindset, and by the time they get to me, you know, they have no historical or literary sense whatsoever, from what I can tell. Like, I don't put it this way to them, but I'm like, wow, didn't you guys go to public school? You really don't know about ancient Greece and ancient Rome, and, you know, the medieval period, and, you know, you never read poetry, and nope. Across the board, the answer is no. They weren't really, you know, if they were exposed to those things, it didn't really stick. So I feel like I have to start completely at ground zero with them to build up any historical sense in them whatsoever when I'm teaching philosophy.
So how do you get them motivated?
You know, this is going to sound terrible, and maybe, you know, you can chastise me if you think this is a terrible way to think about it, but I just feel like some of them are already just kind of a lost cause, honestly. By the time they get to me, like, if they're not intrinsically motivated by the time they reach 20 years old, then there's very little I can do about that. I think making it dramatic probably helps. You know, I want them to see this, you know, arc of human history, and I want them to see their own life in terms of some sort of dramatic arc. And really, I think a lot of people feel massively disempowered. You know, there's a lot in the world we can't change. People are being told how to live from their families, or their religion, or their whatever. And people aren't taking the time to ask these, like, basic existential questions. What do you want out of life? Use your free will to do something with it. You know, use your tenacity to go out and solve a problem, or achieve something in life. Aim high, you know? So I think, honestly, at this point, I think I'm almost maybe a caricature of some sort of existentialist, 20th century existentialist philosopher, where really I just want them more than anything else, even if they remember nothing about philosophy 10 years after they're done with my class, if they at least walk away with the fact that they can take control over their own lives and do whatever the heck they want with it, rather than just living all the lives that other people are telling them they should be living. And I think a lot of students really find that inspiring. When you're young, you want to be told you can live the kind of life you want. You don't want to be pigeonholed. But what they don't realize is that they've already been pigeonholed for 18 years by the time they get to me. So, here comes me, the hippie from California.
But maybe that empowers them.
Yeah,
that you're from somewhere else.
I think so, and I think that's the thing that I find almost comical, because I'm like I'm not a hippie from California. I was raised in Vacaville, for God's sake.
Literally Cowtown.
Yeah,
Vacaville.
Exactly. But I find it easy to kind of style myself to be that way. The kind of open thinker from California, and I think if students see that, they can get inspired to go do something with their lives. So I almost feel a bit more like performance art at this point, where I'm kind of living the kind of life I want them to to be inspired by, even if they have no sense of how I got there or what the details are or anything at all about me in particular. It really is just like, oh, this guy's taking some ownership over his own life, and I want them to do the same thing. And I tell them that pretty bluntly, that I think what they don't realize when they're 18 or 20 years old is that their whole lives have been shaped by people other than them, their family and the local culture or their religion or whatnot. And unless you step back and go, wait a minute, which part of this is worth keeping, which part of this is bunk, you're going to be living for the rest of your life and be stuck in it. And if that's what they decide to do consciously, fine, but at least be conscious about it.
Right.
I think that helps a lot. I think that
if you're teaching kids that are at the junior college, they have kind of stumbled they are already not quite sure what they're doing. It feels like,
and they're open to it because they're taking that first step to get there. Yeah.
Right. I remember in middle school here, because I did some long-term subs in Folsom, and at the end of my 8 weeks that I taught them, I said, okay, give me 3 things that you learned since I was here. And about the 5 classes I taught, every single one, about half of them, and it was big classes, like 34, 36 kids, I had talked about something personal. And one of it was I go, oh, Rick, my husband, he's allergic to oregano. And so in my refrigerator, the salsa I put a skull and crossbones on it. So he couldn't eat it. And then there was something else I brought in that talked about how we gave money to these compassion kids, and they could eat and they could go to school, and they were in Honduras and Ethiopia or something, and in Haiti. And I said, oh, remember Haiti just had a huge hurricane. You guys do understand a hurricane, went through there, they're like, oh, and so out of all the things I learned, out of all the stuff we talked about, all of them talked about the compassion children and the skull and crossbones that are in my refrigerator.
Interesting.
So if you're going to connect with them, tell them something. Tell them, it sounds crazy, but maybe it's your ham radio that you tell them, hey, this is old technology, but look connect it with purpose and new. I don't know.
And I don't do enough of this, and I used to in California more of it. I for some reason I just haven't done this kind of thing here, but maybe I really should, because I show up to teach my class, and if students are already there, like they've got their phones out and then all very tunnel visioned, and I try to chat them up. I wasn't raised that way. I was raised, you walk into a room, you kind of chat up whoever's there, and but I feel, and I used to really, and my career's been in educational technology. I spent time developing online educational materials, but now I've kind of gone neo-Luddite about it. Where it's like a lot of this is really a distraction. I want them to be people. So I really should do more things like just like taking the class outside and going sitting under some oak tree and talking about philosophy out there. But I really would reinforce the hippie image if I did that kind of thing. But I should do that kind of thing more, really. Just, get them outside their technology bubbles and get them in the world a little bit. Yeah.
But bring them into like what they want to do that's not necessarily hooked to, the phone or the computer, mostly now, Yeah, and it takes time to think. Did they ever journal? Did you ever ask them to ask?
Yeah, I'm doing more of that. Like this time around, I had them each start a blog.
Okay.
Because why not? I figure if you have to
Right.
write something, you might as well,
Right.
You're gonna write something worthwhile. It's worthwhile for other people to see and read, right? So put it on the internet.
Right.
And I told them just create a blog. I don't care if you put your actual name on it or not, but create a real one that's out there so other people can access it. And then so for their reading responses, they have to do, rather than just turning it in like in a Word document, or have them just put it on their blog and send me a link to the blog article. So I'm having them do more writing. But I'm actually curious about your opinion about this, because I think my view of this has changed fairly recently. I think with all the recent blogging and writing I've been doing, I see that all the interesting writing I've done just doesn't fit into the mold of what you're told to do as an academic.
Right, exactly.
So I kind of worry that all the advice we give students about how to write their papers, how to all the the typical kind of like, if you're writing an essay in college, here's what you do with your thesis statement and your paragraphs and the conclusion and all the logical stuff, and the end result is still pretty uninspired when you do that. So I kind of worry that a lot of the advice we give them, however sort of necessary it is for writing logically and writing clearly, is never going to make them sort of creative, interesting writers. So I really want them to, at this point, I kind of waffle back and forth between kind of, getting them to write logically and clearly and do the things you're kind of expected to do in a college essay, which they're really terrible at. I mean, they can't write more than a couple pages without it falling apart. Which is foreign to me. I mean, my freshman year of college, I had to write, 8-page papers, and they complain if they have to write anything over 3 pages. So I kind of want to push them that formal direction, but on the other hand, the end result, even when I write that way, is pretty uninspired. And all the interesting things that people have written, even in the history of philosophy in a narrow sense, all the great philosophers weren't writing that way. They were writing something that was more unique. They'd invent their own terminology, and couldn't pigeonhole it into a structure like we tend to do with student essays. And so what I kind of want to do is help them make the transition from thinking, sort of structurally and logically to thinking creatively and being brilliant writers. But there's a huge chasm there between all the advice we give people about how to write all the way through school and those writers who have really written something amazing that's worthy of remembering in 100 years. And I want to bridge that gap for them and get them being more authentic and thinking more creatively. But the danger is doing both of this, or the danger is that you don't do both at the same time. You can write so creatively that you're not logical anymore. And no one can follow what you're writing, or you can write so logically that it's even if it's a great argument or great philosophy, it's still kind of uninspired and a terrible piece to read. And I want them to do both at the same time, but I can't get them to write more than three pages. So it's quite a challenge.
Yeah, I'm not surprised, but it does. I mean, but it would be really frustrating, because in the end, it's detrimental if they can't write logically and figure out, a way of expressing it and having opinion that has based on something besides just their feelings. But then you also want them to write in a different way, a creative way, about their feelings and their response.
Well, we've all become such literalists in this day and age, honestly. Like, it's like people have no sense of what metaphors are, or even the importance of vagueness. I mean, like, you can be vague on purpose if, because it forces people to think for themselves. If you're doing that intentionally, even some great philosophers have done that. Like Nietzsche did that all the time, right? He didn't write very clearly, but that's because he was purposely kind of being vague to force you to think, to think for yourself. And that can serve a purpose. But people are such literalists. Everything they read is just kind of line by line by line by line. It's like, wait a minute, think a little poetically and a little dramatically about this, please.
So have you been successful with that?
I think, well, for some of them, I think this has probably always been true, no matter what you're trying to teach. There's probably three categories of students. There's the ones that are like intrinsically motivated and they kind of get it intuitively. And, they're the ones you really want to inspire because you know that they're going to do something great, probably. But you don't have to worry about them either, because they're going to do something great no matter whether they had you or not. They're going to go
you point them this direction and they'll keep going.
Yeah, exactly. So they're not problematic. Then there's this huge category in the middle of students that are interested, or they've got some raw ability, might need molding, might need some motivation, but they're there and they're kind of willing to learn. They're trainable in some way. and you want to get them into that first category, probably.
Right.
That, if you can get them, teach something in the right way, or get them thinking about something the right way, or really inspired to, run with their own skills in the right way, then they'll become intrinsically motivated and do something awesome. And then there's this third category, where it's just like, no matter what you do, they're not interested, or they're not motivated, or you're going to hate your class no matter what. And
they see no value in what you're saying.
And so, really the audience is probably that second category, more than anything else, where you want to give them that shove into being intrinsically motivated.
Are you partnering them with, making them partner with someone that kind of would help them be motivated?
No, I should probably do that more, honestly. And I think this is probably my own failing as a teacher, where, and maybe even as a student, where I was such an individualist. I hated group work when I was in school. I still hate it. Someone puts me in a group with someone else, I hate that. I just want to do my own work and get it done and move on to the next thing. And so I tend to teach that way, because that's how I learn. And that's, and I hated that when I was in school. If it was like you're grouping up with someone saying, oh, crap, I got to do all this social stuff I don't want to do because I was shy in school, and someone's always carrying the weight and someone else isn't carrying the weight, and I hate that. So and honestly, I think the thing that's allowed me to be successful in life is just my own ability to focus, just go, I'm bracketing all the things that are not important, and I'm going to sit down and I'm going to get this job done, and I'm going to crank it out. And that's what's allowed me to make stuff.
Right, exactly.
In my career, or podcasts, or writing, or whatever. It's a matter of, it's not a matter of being social. It's a matter of shutting things out so you can focus on it. And I think that focus level just doesn't exist. I mean, people aren't.
Well, that's what I was going to say. You've learned something that used to be a skill that most people have, that you perfected. And now the students that you're teaching don't have that skill at any level.
No, they don't, because it's almost like education has gone 180 degrees the other way, where everything's got to be social, or everything's got to have some group component, or everything's got to have some. It's the opposite of this sort of Cartesian mode of thinking, where you just like, sit there by the candlelight and, immerse yourself in something. And I want them to have that level of focus at some point. I don't know how to make it happen. I feel like I'm fighting the wind. The cultural wind about it.
But it sounds like a skill that maybe your unmotivated people might help the motivated people. I don't know. There's something there. Yeah.
What I'm loving is I have such small classes. I mean, community colleges are always a little smaller. I mean, when I was teaching at UC Santa Cruz, I was lecturing, and I would have a 300 student class in a giant lecture hall. Picture me, that shy little kid in junior high, teaching 300 students in a lecture hall, It's amazing. It's amazing how the environment kind of props you up to do those things. But when you're at a community college in California, I'd have maybe 30 students in a class. But here, like I've got 18 in my philosophy class right now. I've got 10 in my online logic class that I'm teaching. So it is nice. You get a lot more kind of one-on-one time with students in that way. But for me, the hard thing is it's just such a part-time thing. I'm like, I do my day job. I walk away from that, go teach my class, and I got to leave and go back to my day job. So
just a second.
Yeah, exactly. So if they're not reaching out to me, then I don't have much time to reach out to them to make sure they're doing the things they need to do. And I wish, I love the collegiate environment. I loved when I was teaching full time, or even if it was at different colleges, I'd have an office, and students would drop by and you could talk about whatever, and it was much more casual. And now it's just like, I'm here, let's teach, let's do this. I gotta go.
Bye.
Exactly.
That's all I'm getting paid for. Okay. It sounds difficult. I mean, it sounds good in some ways, but
it's difficult to make the kind of, and I don't know if maybe every teacher feels this, maybe it's just me, but at this point it's like, okay, I'm 42, and you kind of want to make an impact on things, you want to, maybe there's some hubris and inherent selfishness in this way of thinking, but I don't want to be a forgettable philosophy teacher. I don't want to be a forgettable writer. I want to be someone people, I want to write something worth reading in 1,000 years.
Well, you don't want to get up every morning and pour your heart out and then have people know and acknowledge that what you were trying to do gave them purpose, help them. Yeah,
and so for me, I always feel like this. I've always been a pretty average philosopher, honestly. Like I didn't finish my PhD. I haven't written a book. You know, don't have any published articles in a philosophy journal. I'm too much of a generalist, honestly. I like too many things to really, and this is where I fail as a focused person. It's hard for me to focus on one topic philosophically for years and stay interested in it. Yeah, honestly.
Like, done, get done with that.
So I'm an inherent generalist. So I kind of realized that at a certain point, if I'm going to be remembered either as a philosopher or as a writer or as a teacher, it's going to have to be, it can't fit the mold of how most people do that. I don't fit that mold. I really don't. So in my writing, it's got to be just because I write in a different way. It's got to be because I'm writing about a ton of topics most philosophers aren't writing about. Teaching, I'd like to think I teach a more interesting philosophy class than your average boring philosophy teacher. And I found a way to kind of bring it dramatic to life for students. And it's almost like I'm channeling each philosopher when I'm teaching them, really. It's like I want them to see the world in such different ways. And I feel like I can kind of performatively bring that to life for students in ways they wouldn't get with the philosophy teacher next door. And yeah. So, but, you know, and it's kind of a shotgun game for me where it's like, you know, if I make a bunch of things, if I write about this, that, and the other thing and write all these blog posts and I make my podcasts and if I just, you know, if I'm constantly cranking out writing, maybe something will stick someday.
Maybe it'll be worth it.
Yeah. It's a little bit like, you know, here, put a monkey in front of a typewriter and hope he bangs out Shakespeare. But
No. Yeah, your writings that I read, you do have to think. You're like, oh my goodness, okay, let me think here for a second. You know, it's good.
And it got a little, you know, it was a little OCD for a while where it's like, you know, getting laid off is stressful. And it was like, well, I can sit here and be stressed out while I'm waiting to hear back from, you know, from companies for, you know, for a job interview, or I can do something productive. So I just said, I'm going to bear down. I'm going to write. I'm going to start a blog and I'm going to write. And before I knew it, I was cranking out one a day.
Wow.
Yeah, I have something like 130, you know, you see they're pretty lengthy substantive posts.
Yes.
And I've got like 130 of those that I read.
Okay.
I mean, that's like a book's worth of material.
You got to concentrate. So but it's interesting. It's very interesting. It does make you, I mean, everybody's trying to do something right now that maybe has more meaning or slow down, like you said, or think about God.
I guess that's the thing that's different about me. I really don't want to slow down. Like, you know, like my dad, for example, he and my stepmom.
But you did slow down. You moved to Idaho. You slowed down.
Yeah, but so I could, in a way, but it's also let me focus more.
Yeah.
Right. Like my dad and stepmom, they moved to southwestern Utah. A few years ago, and like my dad's just put himself out to pasture. Like, you know, we've got a pretty
no, you don't want to do that.
No, he's kind of you know, he does some things in the yard, and he's always got some project to do for my stepmom. And you know, every time I try to talk to him about something substantive, it's, you know, I get nothing back. He's just not interested in anything anymore. I don't know what happened, but at a certain point, he just checked out. And, you know, it's like, I don't want to do that. I'm like, we're here, we're alive. It's our time in the sun. Do something with it, people. And I think that's something I'm really disappointed with in people. I think people don't realize just how short life really is. And I mean, people I went to school with, I mean, there are people that were, you know, I went to junior high with that you probably knew. Some of them committed suicide and some had a stroke and they're dead, you know, and their life is done. Their window was really short. Yeah. You know, the more people like that you see, it should motivate you to do something, you know?
Right.
And you know, so for me, I think I feel this pressure to kind of make good use of our you know, the 100 years, you know, knock on wood that we're given here and do something memorable. But again, I think people just have no historical sense. They don't really they're just so focused on their little life that they don't see that, hey, you know, if people want to achieve something great, they have to work for it. And if there's something worth striving for culturally, we have to get together and do those things. And there's no sense of the importance of those things. It's all very inwardly focused and very practical.
Right. Yeah. Well, like I said, every generation is good at something and needs help on the other things. So you bring a lot to expand their world, as long as you don't get frustrated with her.
Well, you know, and what's been fun, again, I kind of straddle this fence in my career. Like sometimes I'm a philosopher and a philosophy teacher, and other times I'm doing other things, you know, for my bread and butter. So I really have this kind of outsider perspective, even on my own career and my own discipline and my own, you know, so I feel like in my writing, maybe you see this having read some of it, maybe not, but I feel like I'm consciously poking the dragon a little bit.
Yes, you are like doing stuff to get a response.
Yes, exactly.
And the goal isn't to people be passive when they read.
That's right. And even if it's a little hyperbolic and exaggerated and overly simplistic, I'm finding myself doing that on purpose, knowing that it's going to aggravate people when I post it on a Facebook forum and other philosophers are going to read it. Because it exposes the cracks in how they think about their own discipline and what they do as teachers and whatnot. And it's kind of that Socratic mirror and forcing them to figure it out for themselves, not just handing them the answers, but people only get motivated when they get disrupted, generally, I think.
Yes.
Something's not uncomfortable, you're not pushing yourself to do something different. So drawing attention to the things that are just wacky about how people think of education and how people think about reading and philosophizing, the things and the culture of being a philosophy teacher, which is just terrible and destructive. I think I don't know. I don't know. I mean, you mentioned some people in grad school, but it's just like the internal politics of being in higher education, and even the different voices and pressures you get about how to teach and how to mold yourself and how to market yourself as in your career and how to think about your own writing. It's all, you wouldn't think that academics would be so pigeonholed, but they do kind of self-police in that way and have their own way of doing things. And a lot of it's just based on stuff that it's not very inspiring, honestly. So I'm trying to kind of undercut some of it.
The reason you went there. Yeah, my brother is a professor at UOP in Stockton.
Okay, yeah.
And he does biology and physiology and stuff like that. But he's always, being in a private school, you always have to bring in income and grants and the pressure for that to keep, then
you get a bit more autonomy in terms of how you do your thing, probably.
Right. And then there's a lot of cultural things in his biology and physiology and undergrad and graduate. I mean, all those things you're talking about, you're like, there's so many layers besides just the student or what you're trying to do. So,
and honestly, this is going to sound terrible because as I'm thinking it to myself, it sounds pretty shallow, but I'm actually kind of enjoying the fact that I get to say, ha ha ha, I didn't end run around all of this stuff. And I get to teach my philosophy classes too. And I get to write about whatever I want and you don't. And I'm having and I make more money than you in the first place. So I'm kind of enjoying the fact that it just exposes the things that are wrong with the path that people are put on academically. And there's other ways to think about life as a teacher or a philosopher or a writer than, especially when you're young and in grad school, because, you go to college and you get an advisor, and you go to grad school and you get an advisor, and there's this, you're part of an academic department. And before you know it, you're kind of on a track. Even if you're focusing on your own little area and your own specialization, you're kind of on this path.
Right.
And you don't know there's any other way to do it.
Right.
So it's fun to kind of be the anti-model to that path, because I still get to play with the big boys. I get to teach my philosophy classes. I get to write the same, get to go to a conference if I want to. I just don't like doing those things, so I don't have to anymore.
Right.
It's fun to take a totally different approach to being a philosopher.
Expand it. Well, what I found, like, I used to want to make, I still want to make a difference, but I just get tired because there's so many things and people and aspects of everything. And, you wake up every day and you're like, okay, Lord, how can I be able to survive this day? How can I do the right thing? How can I make a difference, a purpose? I mean, and, how do you keep going without a purpose? And to me, my purpose is to love God and to help other people. But helping other people can take, they don't always accept it, or
it can backfire. You run the risk of, solving their problems for them, not teaching them to fish.
Yeah. Or you should have just kept your nose out of it in the first place, because your unmotivated students, they don't really care.
Well, they don't want you. I think of it as there's kind of three tiers, and I think people forget about the third tier sometimes. I mean, tier one is you're just living your own life and you don't care. Right? That's one way of being, right? The other way is, I think, what you just described, which is just, you either specialize or you focus on something where you can make a difference. You become content to contribute. I'm gonna do some good. It's not solving the world's problems, but you do some good. And I think people forget the kind of slightly higher stage than that, which is, not being content just to contribute, but you really want to change something, this sort of transformative paradigm shift way of thinking about history or culture or life ethics or whatever.
Right.
Right. And I think that happens academically too. I think most philosophers these days, and again, it's hard because I approach it from
no, it's interesting.
But I think any discipline probably has this quality. You become content to specialize in your little field, your little specialty, your little area of interest, and you become comfortable with the fact that you're not going to be groundbreaking.
Right.
You're going to contribute, that someone else down the road is going to take something and they're going to contribute a little more, and they're going to contribute a little more. But I think we've in viewing education or writing or science that way, or anything that way, I think we forget that there have been these massive paradigm shifts in the history of our culture and intellectual life. The transition from ancient Greek religion to Greek philosophy, huge paradigm shift.
Right.
Transition from that into a Judeo-Christian way of thinking, huge paradigm.
Exactly.
The transition from the medieval period to the modern period, in the Enlightenment or the Renaissance, however you want to characterize. Huge
Renaissance man.
Right. All the paradigm shifts that took place in science, from Aristotelian science to Newtonian physics to relativistic physics to quantum mechanics. Now, someone comes along and, these kind of great figures come along and have some massive, they don't just add to what's been discovered before, they change it all. They undercut all the assumptions of it. And great writers do that too. I mean, look at any great writer in history, and they were doing something groundbreaking that no one had done before, and they weren't just adding to it, they weren't specializing, they weren't focusing, they weren't just picking their little niche, they were think either consciously or unconsciously, they were thinking bigger than that.
Right.
And I think people forget that part, that if you really want to do something amazing, you can't be content to contribute.
Right. Well, that's inspiring.
Yeah, it should be. Right.
Yeah, that's inspiring.
But I think the challenge is not everyone can do that, right? Not everyone is going to be a groundbreaking writer or a paradigm shifting scientist, right? So at a certain point, everyone has to be comfortable with mediocrity.
Right. But if you're not trying to shoot for something beyond the norm, then you're not going to make it. No, that's exciting. And that's very optimistic too.
Well, I think people forget that that's the case. I mean, we're kind of told this narrative that knowledge is very cumulative, that, you pick a specialty, and especially like now, I mean, the age of the polymath is gone. Like, you have to specialize to get ahead in academics or your career or whatever, right? You can't be a Descartes who's a mathematician and a philosopher and a writer and a scientist, and all at the same time. You just don't have time to do those things. There's too much specialized knowledge out there to be able to do that. So almost can't help it be that way. But that kind of reinforces this notion that what you do to get ahead in life is just pick your little specialty and find some tiny little problem to chip away at, and that's what you're gonna focus on in your life. And it's such a limited way of thinking about what humans can do.
No, interesting. Well, you've inspired me. I think that, I think sometimes, I have a lot of responsibility, and continue to have a lot of responsibility, and to be able to be creative in all that responsibility, but constantly keep learning and growing, and, but also do some self-care too. So, I can keep shouldering, or get rid of some of those responsibilities.
It's interesting because I had this idea recently, and maybe, again, I can't help but think in sort of overly grandiose, overly simplistic kind of terms. So, but I think it occurred to me that most teachers, almost every teacher probably has their own little sad story to tell. Like, you want students to go out and do amazing things in the world and achieve great things. And maybe you wanted to do those yourself at a certain point.
Exactly.
And you become content to let other people go do those things and inspire them to do it. But, it seems like some of that has to come from the drive to want to do those things first person rather than by proxy through your students. Right.
Where you become the person that enlightens the world.
Exactly.
The paradigm.
Most teachers have to become content with the fact that they're teachers, and their students are going to have to do those things, right? And I'm trying to do both, interestingly enough.
Well, good for you. Yeah, you have all these niches, and you're trying to move forward in all of them. Well, and I empower you. Yay, go!
Well, and it's interesting because I think maybe because I've always been a little nostalgic, I like ancestry and genealogy and history. And I didn't really realize that about myself until recently. In the last few years, I've started to realize I've really always been interested in those things. And I just never thought about it in those terms. I was always too forward looking at the same time to realize that I was always kind of looking backwards at the same time. But I've become really interested in kind of the psychology of it, how people become who they are and how their interests are developed and what motivates them to do the things they do in life. Because I see friends like, sometimes I envy them and sometimes I pity them. Like they're they're like really simplistic people. They've always had one thing they want to do in life. They have a fairly narrow vision about what life is. They got their house and their picket fence and they've got their dog and they do their whatever. And they seem pretty content, honestly. And I've always been a little discontented by those things. Like I've had too many other interests. So sometimes I look at them and I go, wow, they've got it all figured out. They're they've got a very simplistic notion of what it means to be happy, and they're living a happy life and they're fine. And sometimes I just go, God, what a completely limited life that they box themselves in. They don't even realize it. I don't even know what I want to say about it. I want people to, at least if they're choosing to do that consciously, that's fine. But I worry people aren't even choosing it consciously at a certain point.
They're just stumbling into it.
Yeah, exactly. Or convincing themselves they're happy and fulfilled at the same time, probably,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, good job. I'm really glad that you seem like you're moving forward. You're kind of in a turning point in your life. And
it's hard because I think I've come to realize I'm never going to be a perfect fit no matter where I end up and what I'm doing as a career. Like, I walk around the halls of the community college and I'm like, I'm really not like these fellow teachers around here, honestly. Yeah. This is not, I'm not them and they're not me. And
that's
I'm cool
probably a good thing.
It is. Yeah. Right. They're pretty uninspired, honestly. They don't look like they're having a good time in life. They don't.
Right.
Same thing with my students, like some of them, a small number of them are really inspired, and same thing in a job. Like, I just started this new instructional design job, and it's a pretty small organization. There's like 20 people that work there. And we have these large group Zoom meetings once a week, because they're trying to let everyone be social or whatever.
Right.
The things that people are interested in talking about and the thing, the humor that emerges, like I'm never going to fit in.
Right.
But I think what I've had to learn is that I can, once I realize that I'm going to be, the black sheep, no matter what environment that I'm put in. And I always was, and I still probably always am. And I like that about myself, honestly. It's become almost a narrative about myself. Once I realize that, I can start to use it subversively,
But if that's the kind of person that's going to see things differently. If you're different and you don't fit in all these different ways and you're seeing all these different things, you're going to be able to change stuff where somebody else
and I think the tension, of course, is whenever you have a situation like that, you have to conform and play the game enough to where you're allowed to sit at the table. Right?
You do.
But I think what the danger that a lot of people fall into is that they really are they just become the person sitting at the table. Right? Yeah, they're at home there. And for me, even if I get to sit at the table, it is so I can change things, so I can do something different. Even if it's totally bifurcated, where it's like I'm just putting on this public front for the sake of sitting at the table, so I can do the kind of work I want to do and get the paycheck I want to get. That's okay. But I think I realized I started to approach all of teaching that way. Like when I walk onto campus, yes, I dress a certain way, whatever, kind of fit the image. But the second I walk into that classroom, it's mine, and
exactly. And you're like, okay, we're gonna change.
And I've got my own agenda at that point. Exactly. And I think it took me a while to realize that that's how I approached education in the first place. I got this, kind of I don't know how to describe it, a counterculture, maybe anti-authority kind of bent to it. I don't want students just to be successful. I don't want them just to kind of turn into good citizens. I don't want them just to, become just like everyone else walking around. I want them to be much more individual than that.
Well, you want them to think. You don't want them to be a slob and just like accept. You want them to think and understand how to do logic. That's very admirable.
Yeah, or even, and I mean, I think you'll appreciate this as a former English teacher. I think, I want them to kind of write their own lives creatively. They're really, every decision you make is like writing a next sentence in a story. It's like you get to decide what that sentence is and what path you're going to be on. And most people just kind of live their lives, and they don't make those conscious decisions about what they're doing and how how life could be. And I want them to
they're letting things happen to them instead of Well, maybe they have to do a video, like a picture with words, a picture with words, a picture with words. Because isn't that how they're thinking right now? At least
yeah, they are very much so. Yeah.
So somehow you have to take them the next step. Let's do a picture with words that express that picture, and words and music has words.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because they're missing out on the word part of it.
Yeah, and I think I don't know how to put it. Like they just it's almost like they don't realize the extent to which their own life is moldable. You know, they don't see the different ways, and partly it's geographically. Like here in Idaho, there aren't as many options in terms of how to live, right?
Okay.
You know, compared to the Bay Area, right? I mean,
you
want to be a hippie in a commune in the Bay Area. You want to go live in a city. You want to be a wine connoisseur. You want to be you can do all those things, right?
Right.
You just don't have as many options in that sense. So, you know, I think that geographically, the Bay Area is just the melting pot of it, the cosmopolitan nature.
Okay. So you're finding.
It forces you to kind of think about how you want life to be, because you really can do any one of those things, right?
And change.
Yeah, and change and kind of dabble in them. It's like it's almost playful. Like, in fact, the philosopher John Stuart Mill back in the 18th century called it experiments in living.
Yes.
Yeah, and I think something like a more cosmopolitan environment forces you to think about those things when you're growing up. And even if you don't think about it, at least you're exposed to some of it.
Yes.
And here I just kind of worry that culturally it's fairly hegemonic, and so they don't get that exposure to different options for how life could be.
Yes, which is how my daughter-in-law grew up in Minnesota. Mm-hmm. And so coming to here and becoming part of our family, even though she's Caucasian, even though she's well educated, even though there's all these things where she should be more of a fit, you're exactly right. The culture difference and her experiences are like mind-boggling. Like we're not even speaking the same language.
Yeah.
Sometimes.
And I think anyone when they're 18 or 19 or 20 is like primed to be more conscious about life. Like, you know, they probably aren't happy with how with a lot of aspects of how they were raised or the culture they were raised in, but they don't see the options. They don't see what's possible.
Yeah. So. Okay. So you're talking Idaho. Yeah, that would be really interesting.
Mm-hmm.
A little frustrating too.
Like I had a student come to me at the end of last year, and she, at the very end of the class, she said something like, I forget how she put it. Like she was like kind of tentative. Like I was gonna ask if you could give me some advice or do some advising or whatever. And so she wanted to be a veterinarian. Okay, that's cool. Be a veterinarian. That's neat. So the college counselor gave her the advice that she should go to BYU because it's Mormon land here and everyone goes to BYU. So if you want to be a veterinarian, of course you go to BYU. And you live in Davis. Like where do you go if you want to be a veterinarian? You go to Davis.
I know. I'm like, go to Davis. What are you talking about?
Exactly. So I was like, okay, you're getting some pretty terrible, crappy advice. And I think she just didn't see what's possible. Like, you know, she was kind of being told that there's a track you go on. The college has a transfer agreement with BYU and you get on the track and you do your thing and you go to BYU. That's what everyone does in Idaho, right? And I was like, no, you need to think bigger. Like I told you what I want you to do. Go home, like research the best veterinary schools in the country, make a list of 20 of those schools and go. And I told her, go contact someone at each of those schools, like find the department chair and whatever area you want to be in, write to them and say, hey, I'm the such and such student at College of Eastern Idaho and I want to be a veterinarian and I saw your school and I'm in, can we talk for half an hour? I said, go meet some people and then go apply to those schools. And I said, if you apply, the money will flow. Like you'll get a scholarship or you'll get a loan and the government will hand you money to go to school.
Well, mostly because you're from Idaho and you go somewhere else, that'll help.
Yeah. And I was just like, she was all worried about, where am I going to live? How am I going to afford it? And all the practical things that come up when you're thinking about the things. And I'm like, but all of that fear was keeping her from even doing any of it. She was just going to be steered to BYU because that's what her college advisor was.
Because that was safe.
Right. Exactly.
And that's what people knew.
I don't know what she's actually going to do. I haven't heard anything about it, but I was like, no, think bigger, aim higher, go to some school in Europe, go to the East Coast, go to Davis, go to whatever, but don't just go to BYU no matter what you do.
Yeah. Go to Davis.
She wasn't even Mormon and she was being told to go to BYU. And I'm like, my Lord. So that's the kind of environment that I feel like I'm fighting against, These students are being steered towards a fairly narrow prescriptive path in life.
Right.
And, but if they do that, by the time they're 30, they're going to look back and realize they made all these terrible decisions and they didn't even make the decisions themselves.
Right.
It was one thing if you make a terrible decision and you own it, like, oh yeah, I screwed up 10 years ago.
Right.
But you know, if someone else is making the decisions for them, they're not even living their own lives at that.
Right. Well, that's where you come in.
Yeah, exactly. So if I have to play the hippie from California to get the message across, I can do that.
You're like, no, really, I'm the surfer dude. Make yourself surfer dude.
Well, it's funny because like the college has a dress code, and like so you know they want no jeans, and they want, you know, I don't know if they require a tie, definitely no jeans, and and I I almost can't help but laugh at it. Like, you know, when I was at grad school at UC Santa Cruz, like, it's a surfing town. Like, every other instructor showed up like they were just surfing half an hour before class.
Yeah.
Like, dress code. And so it's interesting because there is this kind of weird duality in life, you know, and to be successful, you do have to conform. If there's a dress code, you got to follow the dress code. Otherwise, you're not going to be employed there very long. And there's certain things you have to do socially or culturally, or, you know, in terms of your appearance, you got to learn to do those things.
Yes.
But, you know, but there's the danger that there's more to life than those things. And, you know, I think, you know, people don't realize that, yeah, you have to conform to do those things, but it's not about that, right? It's about being able to sit at the table so you can do something else.
Exactly. So you have to play the game.
Yes.
It's the game to play, else people won't, you can't contribute.
Yeah. And I mean, even the ancient Stoic philosopher Seneca said something very similar. Basically said, you know, you should conform on the outside, but be different on the inside. Good way to put it. So.
Yeah, but you know, people have to be able to listen, and if they have to step too far over something to hear you, and all you have to do is just not wear jeans, well then
that's okay. Exactly. Yeah, and I've also just found that it's amazing how much weight those things carry. Like, if you do follow the dress code and if you do show up to the meetings you're supposed to show up to, most people are happy with that. Like, they think you're doing everything you need to be doing. You can get away with almost anything you want as long as you dress the right way and show up to the right meetings.
So you're like, I'm at this meeting, but my goal is to change the world. Okay, so I'm here without my jeans, but I'm gonna.
But no one wants to hear, even if they're inspired by that latter part, they don't want to hear it, because I think people have this latent sense that they're not actually living up to that themselves. So you know, if you show up trying to do those things, it just puts them, it's like you're holding the mirror up too close to them. It's laying bare the fact that they're not doing the things that they want to do in life, and they can't handle that.
That's true. You've made them feel, well, hopefully you can inspire them to keep moving forward too. You know, even in just little increments, you know, break it down and then feel like, okay, I'm moving forward. But, I mean, you inspired me.
But you know, it's fun. And I think, like, you know, my grandmother was, well, all three or four of my grandparents were teachers, but I mean, not a month goes by where I don't hear from one of my grandparents' former students. It's fascinating, actually. Yeah, they Google the name and they find me and they write me. It's nice, actually. You know, I have all these friendships with my grandparents' former students, because, you know, I've got to know them over the years because they write to me, because they share their memories, and I'm the one with all the pictures and the audio recordings from their performances and stuff. So. But it's interesting how much of an impact you really can make, even if you don't do amazing things yourself. Like my grandmother, she was a great piano teacher and a great choral instructor, but she didn't write any music herself, at least nothing, you know, that's going to live alongside Beethoven or Mozart, right? I mean, she composed some choral performances, that kind of thing. But you know, she inspired people. Is that enough in life? You know, on the one hand, that itself kind of changes the world. But you know, I always wanted to contribute a little more directly than that. I wanted to be the person making something amazing rather than just teaching.
Being a part of it. So. Well, good for you. You're on your path. It sounds good.
Well,
sounds like a daily
I guess I was
work.
going to say that I became interested in how people become the people they're going to be, like what they're interested in, what they're doing for a living, and how they think of happiness in life, or what life is about, and what they want to accomplish in life. And part of it's internal. I guess just who I am, no matter what teachers I had. But part of it's because of teachers. I think teachers like you or anyone else exposed me to stuff that for me, it stuck with me all the time.
I know.
Right? And I don't think it does with everyone. I think I see that in my own students. I teach them stuff, and it's in one ear out the other generally. But you know, once in a while you get a student that things really stick with, and I hear from them too, and they're doing amazing things, and that's really worth it. But I just wish more students were like that, where the things you teach, you know, even if it's if it's if it's about English or literature or philosophy, something subject related, that's one thing. Right. But it's also just like what matters in life, how to think about life, how to think about, what life is about and your role in it and what to do with your time in the sun. And, some people will hear those things and some people are just going to play it safe. So.
Right. But maybe you've encouraged them to be a little less safe, maybe not as unsafe as you're trying to push them, but if you've helped them be a little more.
I think that's the thing that's so weird about teaching philosophy compared to other disciplines. I think, like, if you're studying biology, you might do biology for a living and you might call yourself a biologist, but that doesn't really soak into your identity in a way. You're still just a person who does biology. I think if you're, a real philosopher in like the Greek sense, right? It's not just something it's not something you read about, but it's not just something even you do. It's really kind of changes who you are. You think of yourself.
It embodies you.
And likewise, if you think of yourself like as an existentialist, in the 20th century sense, really embracing the notion that you've got free will to go out there and do something with it, that changes you, right? You don't view yourself as the same kind of person anymore in the same way that other people view themselves. And I think that's the thing. I don't really care if they remember anything in particular about philosophy, but I want them to kind of become a philosopher rather than, I don't care how they read and write or how any of that. I want them to live their lives.
Well, that's good, because they need someone to help them do that.
Yeah, and I think if there's one thing I've been satisfied with so far, it's and I was kind of doing this in a proto sense 12 years ago or 15 years ago when I first started teaching. Now it's much more conscious and I'm doing it more deliberately. But I hear from students like they're being told stuff in my class they're not hearing from anyone else. I'm like, that's awesome. Okay, good. Which says there's a real need because people aren't thinking about these things in life. Everything's become so prescriptive and so it's like people are being told that all the hard problems in life are already solved. So you just need to find your niche in life rather than be inspired by all the amazing things that are still to be figured out about life.
Like your background, all the stars in the sky.
And it's funny, little things like that make a difference. Like, I'm the crazy philosophy teacher with this, cosmic background. It's like, take this cosmic perspective on life. And even if it sounds like super hippy dippy.
It sounds like you're saying explore other horizons.
Yeah, and I really actually find I don't mind falling into that role if that's what gets the job done for them to be inspired. Okay.
Yeah. Well, I have to get some stuff done, but I am so honored that we could connect and stuff, and it just
let's do it again. There's no reason not to. Just pick a time and do it periodically. It'd be fun.
Yeah, and you have the Zoom that. Because of a teacher, right? That you don't have to pay for it, right?
I actually keep an active Zoom account because I use it for podcasting. So, for $15.
Oh, okay. So you have it. Yeah, we have one, but I don't know. Rick's in charge of all that.
Yeah, in fact, that's the thing. It's frustrating. In order to be a designer, like I'm an instructional designer by day, you got to have all the tools. You need. I have an Adobe Creative Cloud subscription. I got a Zoom subscription, and it'd be awesome if a company would just pay for those things. But, but in order to, it's like when you're a construction worker, you show up with your truck full of tools. Like I've got my truck full of digital tools that I show up with every day, so I can get the job done. So I've always got a subscription to all the, I've got a subscription to Canva and video.
Well, you should feel honored because I don't usually sit. And I have been sitting talking to you, and that is really good. I never sit. Even my at work, I have a table where I stand, and everybody laughs because it can go up and down, and it never goes down. So, my dog's here too. Here, Emma, you gotta come say hi.
Oh, what a cute dog!
She's been whining at me, but.
Well, you don't get the chance to say these things, but you were always one of my favorite teachers. Even though we've been in touch over the years, but we haven't had a chance to actually talk in a long time. So it's nice to be able to say that. And I wouldn't be the person I am without all the great teachers in life. So
it's really, really encouraging because I really appreciate that. Because I do remember you. I do care, and it's nice to hear that. Through the years, you're like, you want to have made a difference. So that really means a lot.
And honestly, I think I look back at all the teachers that I had, you and other people, but from elementary school all the way through high school, I had an interesting series of really unique personalities.
Yes, you did.
In Vacaville, it was like this little enclave of really wacky doodle teachers, honestly.
yeah, let me tell you. Yeah.
Wait,
yeah.
From Mr. Clark, the world's greatest fisherman, to, you know, and you know, they had some crazy teachers in high school and elementary school teachers that, you know, they were kind of closet individualists, even if they
yes
wouldn't have put it that way.
Yes. You said it in a very nice way.
Yeah, and I'm glad, because I feel like I became one of them, and you know, that's good. So.
Well, thank you. Yeah, so let's talk again. I appreciate it. Okay, take care.
Nice talking to you. I'll talk to you soon.
Okay, bye.
Bye-bye.